So good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the intimidatingly named So Many Tools, So Much Power. Wasn't my idea, that was my boss Alex's idea for this, so hopefully the presentation lives up to the name. So I'll be walking you through the presentation, but this is in conjunction with my colleague Renan. I'll have details for contacting us at the end of it. And really the aim of this presentation, or the goal, is to talk about HealthShare Analytics. A lot of people in the room will know HealthShare pretty well. A lot of people will know HealthInsight, and some people mightn't know any of it. So the presentation is going to walk you through some tools that we can use. So hopefully it'll give you good insight to somebody who's new to this, and at the same time you'll get a lot out of it if you know HealthInsight. Another thing I want to point out is that a lot of people think of HealthShare and analytics, they think of HealthInsight. And really, HealthInsight is only the start of the analytics. That really gives you the platform to then build your analytical solutions off, right? So that's the normalized presentation of the data. And I'll step through that during the presentation. So first off, I wanted to have a look at what analytics are, what the use cases are, and then how we can apply the tools to meet the use cases that you might have. And the definition of analytics, if you look it up, is very vague. It's something like the computation analysis of data, something similar to that. And with that, you get a pretty broad definition of what analytics is. A few years ago, if you go on the internet, even now, when you type in what types of analytics are there, you might get 3 types, depending on which websites you hit or which knowledge base comes back to. And those are descriptive analytics, so the more basic dashboards, what's currently happening. Predictive analytics, what might happen in the future. So in our healthcare setting, what's the chances of diabetes? What are the chances of readmission? Prescriptive analytics, which are do this. Based on this criteria, do this action. If you look at more websites, you'll find out there's another type of analytics, diagnostic analytics. So why did this event happen? So again, with healthcare, you're looking at gaps in care, what the outcomes were for certain patients who had certain protocols of care. And if you go on the websites again, look, you'll find there's 5 types of analytics. And there's probably even more types of analytics since I Googled this. And this is cognitive analytics, and this is applying machine learning and AI in analytics. So the whole field of analytics is changing very quickly, and with that, you have a lot of different use cases. A few years ago, when I was a BI lead in England, this is what I spent most of my time on. I was building dashboards for hospitals in the NHS. And that was seen as the analytics, the cutting-edge analytics. But over time, a lot more use cases pop up, right? Now analytics is used to actually treat and manage patients. So with the chronic conditions that are spreading, trying to manage those, finding population health, finding cohorts you need to manage, managing those cohorts. You want to take advantage of the big data elements. So you want to start doing machine learning, artificial intelligence, predictive modeling. You'll have use cases where you want to analyze unstructured data through NLP. You might have self-service analytics. People want to build their own stuff. And you might want to start looking at how you can maybe monetize your data by anonymizing it and making it available to life sciences. So the use cases are coming more and more. So to support you with that, you need a very large tool set or a very powerful tool set that can help you address all of those use cases. I'm going to go through each one of these. And again, these are tools that we use on top of our data model. So this is really where a lot of the magic sauce is with HealthShare. So all of that data that you have, disparate data, different formats, we bring it back, aggregate it into a data model that you get out of the box with HealthShare. And you can extend this model, right? So you might have extra vaccination data that isn't in the model. You can build that on and extend it. You can add completely new elements to it, like social data. So this data model really underpins everything we do in HealthShare. Everything from the viewer you see to personal community to the analytics that we're going to have a look at. And I'm probably going to reference this back a lot during the presentation. And this data model we've built on our experience from working with the likes of Epic, our own TrackCare EHR, and implementing HealthShare and the feedback we get from you guys, our customers, and that we do. And this really speaks to what our vision is with HealthShare Analytics. So again, this is far broader than just the likes of HealthInsight or that descriptive analytics or dashboards that I spoke about. A lot of organizations will be in this situation, Right? On the left-hand side, you've got lots of different data sources. You've got HR data, you've got claims data, CRM data, social determinants, and each one of them is in a different structure. They have different interoperability capabilities. They have different terminologies. You have SNOMED, ICD, Lourenco, all these different ones. On the right-hand side is what you want to do with all this data. Right? You want to get this nice data and use it for visualizations. You want to get this nice data and use it for data science, build predictive models. You want to maybe innovate, build Fire apps, whatever else it might be. And really that's where we see HealthShare and HealthShare Analytics sitting, is in that part where we bring the left-hand side to the right. So we take all of this disparate data, aggregate it, normalize it down, translate it into the standard terminology you want to use, and map it to our data model, and then make that available to you through normalized tables, that you can do all of these use cases. A very big differentiator for us is that we sit very close to this data on the left. It's not ETLs you're taking out and you're loading in. The data comes near real time in, so that allows us to do a second part of our goal with HealthShare Analytics, which is to make this actionable, right? There's no point in having all this nice data, visualization, and all of these rules and models and insight if you can't actually use that at the point of care. Okay, so I remember I did a machine learning course with Duke University, and we spent 3 days building models. And then they had someone present from healthcare, and I asked the question, what does this look like to the clinician? And they weren't able to answer because this was just purely academic. So you don't want this just being academic models you present on. You want that real time to come back into the workflow to the clinician to help them to say, you might want to take this action based on this data. So we're going to step through how we achieve this, the tools you can use with the HealthShare Analytics that allow you to address those use cases and all the new use cases that are going to come with analytics in the future in this growth area. So the first tool I want to talk about, if you know Health Insight or InterSystems BI, you'll know this tool pretty well, is the Anonymizer. And it's an often overlooked tool in terms of what it can do. So the Anonymizer gives you a visual canvas where you can start interrogating and querying your data. So that data model that we have, we represent that data in relational tables, and then off those tables we build cubes, analytical cubes. So out of the box you can immediately start analyzing your data. Once you hook up the Health Insight to HealthShare, that data flows through, and now you can start analyzing the data. So you can drill into it. Those cubes are linked. So for example, I can look through demographics with medications and diagnosis to find a cohort of patients for a trial study. I can look for patients who might have gaps in care. And I can create pivots and custom listings that I might want to use in my visualizations or in notifications, which I'll talk about in a second. So that ability to create a query that can then push back to the care provider in near real time to inform them of a situation, give them an idea of what they might need to do, etc. So once you've analyzed the data, once you've drilled into it and had a look at the data, you want to start visualizing that data, right? You want to build nice dashboards. You want to make them available to people. You want to give them access to query and work with it. So we give you a lot of tools that allow you to create visualizations how you want. We have our own visualization tool in InterSystems BI. It's very powerful when you want to interact with the data. So for example, you can build a visual dashboard, show me every patient who has a certain risk score for diabetes, and then you can select that cohort of patients, add them to a work list, add them to a cohort that you want to manage. We also give you access to other tools and capabilities to link standard capabilities like PowerBI or Tableau. So these are two representations of HealthShare data using Tableau on the top and using PowerBI on the bottom. And we give you adapters, ODBC, JDBC, and special adapters built into PowerBI to connect to HealthShare Analytics, directly to the cubes or to the tables. And I very quickly want to show you what this looks like for Tableau. So I've just opened Tableau Desktop. And what we've done is created a model that links the HealthShare data. So if you're working with Tableau or Power BI, we can give you a pre-built model you might want to use. So there's a lot of data fields in HealthShare. You might not need all of them for analytics. So what we've done is created a cut-down version for analytics as a starting point, and you can build that model out if you want. And this is it on the left-hand side. So you can see all of the folders I have linked to all of the different patient data. So you've got allergy, diagnosis, medication, etc. So you can open up any of this and interact with it. So again, we built this model. It's available. We can give to you through the likes of Tableau, so you can access it and start up and running pretty quickly. What I want to do right now is I want to have a look at my vaccination rollout program. I want to see, the number of vaccines I have, what the uptake is, and compare that to the population at large in the state that I'm managing. So this pre-built model, which has measures and dimensions, I'm going to bring across my vaccine count. So now I can understand how many vaccines have been given. And if I want to, I can drill in to look for particular ones, so COVID vaccines, flu vaccines, whatever it might be. Now, I also want to see what is the uptake like geographically based on the patient's home address. So if I come across to the patient, I open up the hierarchy for address, and I bring it across city. So now I have a table format. I want to change that to a map. So now I can get a quick graphical representation of what the vaccine uptake is like geographically across my state. I'm going to change a couple of these things. I want to change this to a size so I can see the size of that. Let's make it blue, and we'll add a border on this. Okay. Now, what I also want to do is I want to use layers to work with this. And I'm going to use a layer that's not data within HealthShare, but it's external data. In this case, I'm looking at the census data. So I'm going to overlap this with the census data for the state. So I want to check, is there an area where there's a large population but a low uptake of vaccines? Okay, I'm going to split this down by zip code. So now very quickly I can start seeing areas where there's a low vaccine uptake but a large population. So I might want to start a program to try to push that out in that region. So just a way to very quickly graphically view your data using whatever tool you might want. I could have done this with PowerBI. I could have done this with InterSystems BI. And you can go ahead and even layer more over it. Like, for example, I might want to layer over where have we got facilities to see where our facilities are. I'll make this a little small for myself. And now I can see where my facilities are. So using the model connected right into HealthShare Analytics, you can very quickly start building powerful visualizations that you might want with the data that's available. We'll do another demo later on. So there's a couple of demos throughout this. I probably should have told you. So once you've analyzed the data, once you've visualized the data, you might want to start managing patients. So for that, we have a tool called Dynamic Cohorts. And Dynamic Cohorts allow you to aggregate groups of patients based on common attributes. So for example, you might want to create a screening program for breast cancer. You might want to look at people over a certain age who haven't had a mammogram in a certain time frame. So it allows you to create a dynamic list of patients that you can then manage. Once you create the list, you can extrapolate that, pass it over to another system to book appointments for them. So it really allows you to manage and group patients that you want to work on. So that might be everything from screening programs, population health, registries, care management. So it's a very powerful tool that allows you to create these groups of patients. And it's a tool that we looked at working with for COVID in the UK. So we wanted to find groups of patients based on certain criteria so we could then start prioritizing those for vaccinations. So this tool allows you to bring those patients together. Once you have them, you can also get push notifications to let you know somebody's been added to that cohort or removed. So if a patient subsequently has a mammogram, they're automatically removed from the screening program, for example, so they won't come onto it until they haven't had their appointment booking for another year, whatever it is you decide on. And those notifications that push back to a care provider, just like I spoke about the dynamic cohorts, we also have notifications that you can push right into workflows. And this is key. This is one of the key elements to us for HealthShare Analytics. Again, it's not just a static analytics solution sitting on the side that gets ETLs and visualizations. We really want to start pushing notifications back. So you want to start pushing information back to your care providers. And one of the tools we use for that is advanced notifications. And this allows you to create queries through SQL, through MDX, or even through custom classes that you can find particular sets. So it might be a project we were looking at in South Africa where we looked at patients who are at high risk of developing, I think it was hypertension. It's escaped me now. So we assigned a score and we pushed a notification back to the care providers to let them know that a patient has this particular score and they might want to look at this patient. And we can do that through different mediums. So that might be an email, that might be to an app. And what I've done here is I've created a link into Microsoft Teams. So the idea that you're not always going to be logged into the likes of HealthShare or your email. Teams is a tool that's used a lot now by care providers. So I created a link to Microsoft Teams. And in this case, it's sending me alerts that I subscribe to. So when I, as a clinician, want to use advanced notifications, I can subscribe to the notification and I can tell it what channel to use. So if it's an urgent notification, I can tell it come to my Teams channel. If it's not, I'll send it to my email. In this case, I can then interact with this. So as the notification comes back, I can select the link to do multiple different things. View the record, view a particular piece of information, view a summary. You can decide what that looks like and how that interacts. To enhance that and to work in conjunction with that, you've probably seen we've released HealthShare Action Engine. And HealthShare Action Engine allows you to give the ability to non-technical people to create notifications, to create rule sets, use CDS hooks as a standard to create these actions that will trigger a card or push notification back to your application or back into HealthShare. So it has a visual canvas which allows you to create triggers. So on this particular event, run this check. You can then create conditions, so if the patient does or does not have particular medical information or certain criteria, and then you have an action or an action card. And that action card is what you decide to push back to the user. So in this case, here's an action card that's come back to let me know of a particular piece of information. I can see the suggestions on that. I can choose to ignore it. And the idea is we can also use this then in future repetitions, depending on what the action was taken, what was the outcome of the patient. So this can feed back into your analytics to manage populations, view outcomes, etc. There's APIs for external access, and again, this is us trying to really get into the care provider's workflow, push this right back into the point of care, onto the system they're logged into. As well as that kind of rule base that you create as a human, we've put a lot of work into machine learning, and you've probably seen a lot of sessions this week on integrated ML, auto ML, Python, etc. So this is a really big area for us as a company, both Iris for Health, HealthShare obviously taking advantage of those capabilities. And this is the sorts of ability to really start using your big data and start using predictive models in workflows. So here, this is in itself a toolkit. Here are 4 or 5 things that are very powerful to you with your HealthShare Analytics that you can now start building some capabilities from. So integrated ML, it allows you to create, train, and run a model all through SQL. So you might not have data engineers working for you, you might have a data scientists. This gives you an easy access to start creating models, start using predictive models, creating them, training them, and running them. And when we do this, you can use a different agent to run that off. That might be Data Robot if you've got the license, H2O, or our own internal engine, which is AutoML. So using AutoML, we can create those models directly in Iris, within HealthShare, test it, and then plug those models back in, for example, using the likes of PMML. So the ability to not just train a model, create a model, but that don't make it academic, use it. Use it with the runtime data. So as an observation item comes in, checks the model, sends back a notification to the application. So another powerful tool is the ability to support these PMML structures, import your models, and run that model on the runtime data as it comes in. Embedded Python, so you can start using Python directly within Iris and then subsequently within HealthShare Analytics. So it allows you to bring the processing back on our side. You don't have to make the data external. You don't have to put it out. You can start using Python embedded directly within Iris, take advantage of some object script you've already written, some methods. You can call those in and use those. And the connectors I spoke about, so like the H2O, Data Robot, gateways for Python and OR. So really a big tool set for you to start using machine learning with that HealthShare Analytics and start really affecting workflows and pushing insights back to your care providers. A key element of any data model or machine learning is training it and testing it. So for that, you might need to anonymize your data. And this is a new tool that we've released. It's not even released, I should say. It's in early adopter. Is that the right term? Okay. Early access. Up until 2 weeks ago, this tool is called the Anonymizer, which I thought was a great name. I can nearly see a Netflix show or something out of it, but powers that be decided it was going to be healthcare data anonymizer. So what the data anonymizer does is it has methods that can either anonymize or pseudonymize your data. So we've got helper methods. Out of the box, it's tailored to work with the HIPAA rules, but this can be changed to work with the likes of GDPR, national implementations of guidelines. So you can edit and extend these methods. So for example, you're seeing a number of the helper methods here. So for example, zip code might be different in different countries. You might only want the first 3 digits. You might want to change the out-of-the-box functionality, which might be replace a random string for a name. So you can change the basic behavior of the anonymizer. This runs on XSLT, so we've been testing it. It's extremely performant, and you can have this anywhere in the pipeline. So you might have this on ingestion of the data, so right on the edge. So one of your use cases might be, as the data comes in, I want to take an anonymized copy of it and send it to another application. You can put the anonymizer there. Or it might be at the very tail of the pipeline, which is after all of the data comes in, after it's been linked, after it's been normalized, I want to anonymize the data and pass it to whatever platform you might want or whatever service you might want to work on it. And this even works on not just HealthShare, but it works on Iris and any of our platforms with where it is. Here's an example of before and after. So when we do it, you can see the data before and you can see the data after. And I've just put that in Notepad++ just to show you an example of where we've taken identifiable data and we've de-identified it using the different methods that we have out of the box. So not just analytics, reporting is often overlooked. So InterSystems Reports, as you may have heard, is our ability to have reports embedded in the system, to work with the reports. So you might not always want to use a dashboard to visualize your data. You might want a report. You might want to run that every month, push it as a PDF out to certain people. And so for that use case, you might want to start using a report instead of a dashboard, for example. And our InterSystems Reports supports you in doing this. This allows you to create pixel-perfect reports, so you have complete control over where you can drop elements like header, footer. You can drop data elements there. What I have on screen is what's called the Report Designer. So InterSystems Reports uses Logi Reports. So it's a fairly well-known reporting tool in the industry, so you may have heard of it. So we've taken that and we use that with our applications. So this part is the designer. This allows you to create your report. It has out-of-the-box templates and wizards that walk you through everything from a standard list report to a graph. So it's very simple to use. And what you're seeing here is I have this linked up to the HealthShare data on the left. So again, you can access all of that data, use that data to create a report, visualize it how you might want, and use the different capabilities like push that out to certain users every month who wants to have a look at their performance or their key KPIs that they want to run on the system. In building with the need to have self-service, and this comes up a lot in every customer we work with and every procurement that we work on, is the ability to allow you to create your own cubes, to easily create your own dimensions, easily create your own measures. So we have a tool that we call Adaptive Analytics, and this is a partner of ours at scale that we work with. And this gives you a visual canvas where you can easily, again, access the HealthShare data. What you're seeing here is one of the dimensions that I created using the HealthShare data, and it allows you to create everything from cubes with multiple fact tables, simple cubes, dimensions, measures, and you can then project that to different platforms. So for example, you might want to use this with PowerBI or Tableau, or you might want to use that projection or that data in one of your models that you want to work with, Data Robot or H2O. So it gives you the ability to create these different cubes, different elements that you might want in a very easy to use graphical format using drag and drop. So it really takes some of the technical side of it out of that capability. You can also include external data from HealthShare using Adaptive Analytics with the right tool set, with the right license. So you can bring data together, not just the HealthShare data, but from other sources to then create a cube that has all of that linked aggregated data across the way. We're continually working with AtScale doing co-development on this, and this we see as a tool really that kind of steps away from the near real-time element to it to where you want to create nearly like a data warehouse or an ability to create your own tables and work off from there. So with that near real-time, HealthShare, we sit over on this side. Adaptive Analytics you can use for the ability to create the different cubes that might not need that real-time aggregated data across. No data is duplicated, so everything still stays on HealthShare. You're not duplicating the data on Adaptive Analytics. What it does is it creates aggregates. So it uses aggregates to very quickly give you back the data and the information based on the cubes. The final tool that I want to talk about is text analytics. So everything I've spoke about really is a lot of structured analytics, where you're looking at tables and fields that have particular values. We also have the ability to run text analytics. So this is for your unstructured use cases, where you've got a lot of text notes, so clinical documents. If you've got PDFs that you've scraped that you want to use. And this tool works right in with HealthShare. You don't need prior knowledge of the particular content that you're working with. It runs NLP across the data, and it pulls out entities. So you can understand everything from hypertension to does not have hypertension. So it understands if there is negation. It understands if it checks for frequency, spread, and dominance. You can use dictionaries if you want. So, for example, you might have different terms or shorthand in the text notes, but they're all the same element that you want to work with, right? So you can use a lot of different tool sets here to analyze unstructured data. And what I've shown here is actually I've taken the radiology cube from HealthShare, out-of-the-box Health Insight, and I've ran it through our text analytics. And in this case, I can see certain concepts. I can search them like malignancy. That can search through all of the different notes. I can check similar entities, and now I can search through notes that meet that particular criteria. And not only can you run it in this way, you can actually use it in your cubes. So in HealthShare, for example, I ran the radiology reports through Health Insight. I then have access on my cubes as a dimension for the free text fields, and I can search for entities. So for example, you might want to run a trial on patients who've had an MRI brain with a particular sequence, like a T1 weighting or a T2 weighting. And that's often buried in the text notes of the radiology results. So that could be quite manual. You've got to go through it. You've got to look for the particular sequence you want. But in this case now, you can very quickly just search for that scan sequence that you want, and you'll find all of the patients who meet that particular criteria. So it really allows you to analyze the text data on the system. This, again, I want to show you a quick demo of this. This is a tool that we work on internally, and it's using data to create quality metrics. So the use case for this is you might have a lot of text notes that you need to go through, and you want to find certain pieces of information to make a decision, whether this patient has had their chemo or not had their chemo. And that might be based on a couple of different criteria. So you want to search through the notes for particular entities like ER, so that's the estrogen receptor. So in this case, I can search for this particular element, ER, through the patient's record. It finds all of the text notes that meet that. This isn't just a search. It's not just a string search. It will, as I said, search for synonyms or anything that's similar to it. If I want, I can read the full text from the particular note, find out where the relevant part is, and then make a decision whether or not this patient meets this particular criteria. And if you were to do that without this sort of analysis, you could be going through every patient record, through every note, looking for these particular elements. So it's a very powerful tool that allows you to manage and look at your unstructured data. And that really is the tool set that I wanted to go through. So in summary, there are lots of different types of analytics. It keeps changing, it keeps moving around. With that, you get a lot of use cases, new use cases that aren't standard dashboard analytics, but there's a huge tool set available to you with HealthShare Analytics that allows you to manage all these use cases to address all of the different types of analytics that you need to work on. I understand that you may have seen some of these sessions or not seen them, and some of them have already happened, unfortunately, so you might have to go back to the recordings. But these are some sessions that will that I've signposted to you based on the content in this, so you can get a deeper dive on some of the elements that you might want on this. I've also got further reading, so I can make this available to any of you. And please feel free to contact myself, Renan, anyone on our team if you have any questions on this, if you want to look at particular tools. And I've left a good bit of time, I see, open to the floor for questions, comments, feedback, and whatever else it may be. So thank you very much. Has anyone any questions? Yeah, please.
So for reporting, you said that you used a well-known reporting tool?
Yeah, Logi Reports.
Sorry?
Logi? Logi, yeah, L-O-G-I, yeah. Oh, sorry. Do we have a mic? The question was, We mentioned that we use a separate tool called Logi, or a well-known platform that we've white-labeled and included in our solution called Logi. Yeah, Mike?
You mentioned you had pre-built models.
Yeah.
Tableau, PowerBI,
Yeah. And the adaptive analytics, if anybody is looking to do work with adaptive analytics on HealthShare, we can provide you with a pre-built semantic layer that you can use as a reference. So it's got a lot of the out-of-the-box cubes pre-built into the adaptive analytics layer, and you can use that, copy it, and take the parts that you want. But it gives you a starting point that you can either build off or use elements off to build new cubes. No problem.
And the adaptive end, that's available now?
Yeah, that's available now. Are we open? Is that available to just general, or is it a case that we work with customers who want to use it with HealthShare?
No, we just need
Just the right license, yeah. Okay. Well, thank you again very much.